So that you know, Mark, the only other person that gives me more grief about football than you is Earle.
Really?
Earle, you
Wow.
awake?
Okay.
I am. Hang
You
on.
are.
I haven't played this.
How's it going?
It's going well because we're in first place. Sucks. And I'm wearing my Chuck Bednarik football jersey.
Yeah, I
Oh,
saw that.
wow.
I saw you walking around backstage with the Eagles jersey, and yeah, thanks for that.
University of Pennsylvania and played for the Eagles. And he sat on Jimmy Taylor and the only team to beat the Packers.
Yep.
Packers. So
absolutely. Anyway. Well, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I've been reflecting on some of the things that you guys have been telling stories on that. It's interesting. The sports angle is interesting because I've lived 35 years in Philadelphia, 20 in Austin, and now my 5th year out here in LA, in the LA area. And it's physically your friends move around and stuff like that. And most of them have all moved on from wherever they were. But I just couldn't see myself going into the same building for 40 years.
Yeah.
And, moving on was a really healthy thing. The other part was I worked at this company called SmithKline, now GlaxoSmithKline. And, when you're working there, you have this fear that you're going to lose this protective shroud over you of the corporation. And when that thing went, it was really kind of interesting to people's psyche because they thought no matter what, the company was going to take care of you for the rest of your life. Yeah. And suddenly, hi, your job is now in North Carolina and someone else has that desk, was a pretty common occurrence. So it's kind of interesting how things have changed.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about that earlier, and I think that again goes back to not that long ago, right? A couple generations ago, it was easier to define yourself by your career because you were more likely, I think, to have the same job for decades. I mean, I know, I had a great uncle who worked at the same factory for 40 something years, retired, got his watch, and that was it. And, one of the things now that we see the change with the way that the economy works, we're more mobile. We're switching not just jobs, but whole careers. And if your identity is so wrapped up in what you do instead of who you are, I mean, I think that it does pose some real challenges. So, like that's maybe the one part of that appeal of the ripple effect too, is, connecting at a more authentic level, not just here's what I do, because that doesn't matter as much.
There was a guy when Trump took office, he went out to Carrier in Indiana, and one of the main leaders was talking. He said, I started working for this company 2 weeks after graduating from high school, and I'm 3 years away from retirement. And I'm thinking, oh, screw you, pal. Let me tell you about my life. And it was kind of annoying to hear these things because people had this expectation that, it would continue forever. I mean, and one of the ways I got blasted was I moved to Philadelphia with my wife, and 2 years into it, we split up. And suddenly I'm hustling on my own job-wise and paying child support, taking care of the kid, and having to find a new place to live. And so, you suddenly realize you live on your wits and you live on what you do on a day-to-day basis. And, when the job disappears, I was on my way home from getting canned and making phone calls looking for the next gig. So, it's just keeping moving and stuff like that.
Well, the amazing thing that, Mark, I don't know if you remember this, but we met Earle, I think, at the exact same time. We were over at
Texpresso.
What's that?
Texpresso,
yeah, off Anderson. Yeah. And we went to this event, and I mean, we met several people that we've all stayed in contact with, right? But you had this event because you're kind of like, I'm kind of tired of the regular BS networking because nothing ever gets accomplished, or you got somebody that's going to dominate the conversation and push their business agenda. And you said, hey, I want to do something a little bit different. And you were at the time, every one of us was not necessarily in a position to help each other in any real perspective, but somehow we all kind of found this, our way to this, and we all sort of struck up this really unique friendship because of it, right? So Mark and I had been going to an event collectively for probably a year at that point, right? We were at the same networking event, but you're having the same conversations, all great people, all phenomenal individuals in their own right, but not a lot of there was not a lot of uniqueness in that. We were kind of going through, pause, rewind, pause, rewind, and every week was the same story. And so we wanted to look for something different. And you were kind of offering that at that point, and you were really upfront about it. Like, hey, look, I'm really trying to do something a little bit uniquely different here, but different in that you also said, hey, look, there's a business agenda here that we all need to accomplish. We all need to get really clear about what that is so that we can be really good about telling people when they actually ask you the question, what can I do to help you? You have an answer for that. And I always respected that because it really does. It's important. I don't think a lot of times people know how to tell people how they can help them because they don't actually spend the time thinking about it necessarily. Everybody's either thinking about their product or service or how to pitch it or the 30-second elevator pitch, but they're not really good at really defining, what they need and ultimately what value that they can provide.
I heard this really entertaining salesperson say she never answered questions. I need this in 6 weeks. Well, why do you need it in 6 weeks? Can your products do this? Well, why do you need to do that? And she closed.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I passed on to my son, who's in the arts business, he went to school for videography and movies. And he ended up running a startup for a while. And he understands business. And so he's between gigs and he found something and I was like, look, you're a closer. You know how to do this. You know how to make the business happen. You know how to do it. And remember that going into this thing is that you know how to get the job done.
Yep.
And that's the one thing he took with him on that. And he's now got a 6-week gig that's going to be extended as projects keep coming in. But he also he's learning augmented reality technologies. And he absolutely sees the value in doing that. And he's a closer.
That's awesome. Well, he's not, it must come from his dad, right?
Well, his mother is no longer with us, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's switch gears for a second. I remember those stories. What's the story behind your company?
My divorce stories were legendary.
That'll be a totally different podcast or live stream. We should go there for sure. I'll pour alcohol later at night. Let's do that.
Is this light showing right?
Yeah, now we can see you. Before it was just like you were, trying to be the man of mystery. But maybe tell us the story behind the naming of your company, because I kind of like that.
So when I was naming the company, I wanted to come up with something interesting, but I was coming up with like technology associates and all that were taken up by the Texas Secretary of State's office, and they were turning down everything that I did. And so the Higgs boson stuff was happening at that time. And so I was looking for a pun off of neutrinos. And DONUT stands for the direct observation of the neutrino tau. My daughter was a science geek at the time, and she thought it was really cool. And away we went. So it's one of those things where there's a certain group of people that appreciates this. I gotta do something with this lighting. This is Halloween-y, isn't it? The Beatles, Revolver. Anyway, so I did a pun off of that. And so the people that are into science and the people that I deal with, they appreciate this. They actually get it. The movie Interstellar, the Matthew McConaughey movie.
Yeah.
The science guy was a guy named Kip Thorne, who was a PhD out of Caltech, a Nobel Prize winner, and buddies with Stephen Hawking. And he thought it was cool. What else can you do?
Yeah.
So it was, I got a lot of flack for it when I named it, but at the same time, it's something people have always said, this is something that they remember and they can find me. Yeah. And I'm actually pushing Fermi Labs off the Google search process.
Nice. Well, so we have about 5 minutes left. You and I had talked a little bit about LinkedIn today. And I know one of the things that you are a absolute master at is figuring out how to leverage LinkedIn to generate, not just more connections, but beneficial connections, but ultimately leveraging that as a resource. Can you share more about your strategy there?
Well, I started in the 90s when this was going on, and a lot of it was because I could look up the names of people's customers, to be honest, because they would say, well, who's the computer person at Excel Electronics or whatever it was? And you look up the salesperson who had the account, and he would put down his LinkedIn connections. Like, okay, got someone to call. But over time, and it was one of these things where it's one of those things you keep doing until you suddenly find out it's a value. So in 2007, I went to work for UT, working in global commercialization. We were dealing with technologies from Mexico and Hungary and other places. And they said, well, we need to make a connection with somebody at Schlumberger. And I would just type in LinkedIn and say, this is the guy who looks for new technologies at Schlumberger. And I've kept that going. I've got like 15,000 contacts. Anyway, I make a lot of money on that because I know how to find the people that are looking for new technologies. And so I'm not like selling them something that they don't want. I'm connecting with them to share them with information that they do want.
Yep.
So that's basically the trick on LinkedIn. But I want to jump back to sports since that's a more important topic. I highly recommend if you ever get out to LA, the Dodgers game, the Micheladas, and sitting in the bleachers. It's the best.
See, we got to tell Jennifer that. She'd be all over that. Yep.
I got to tell you, I've never been in the bleachers at Wrigley or anything like that, so I can't compare it. But I mean, the bleachers at Dodger Stadium are really awesome. The other thing is that if it's a night when there's fireworks or they're showing a movie, the people in the bleachers get to watch the end of the game from the field.
Oh, wow.
So take your shoes and socks off and walk around the outfield at Dodger Stadium, and oh my God. I had a friend who was playing catch with his son for a little while until they told him to stop. But, standing in the outfield at Dodger Stadium and just wandering around is just cool.
Oh, that is cool.
I highly recommend it. And, but I mean, I didn't know this. The first time we were there, I didn't know this, but now from then on, when we went on those nights, it was always bleacher seats. But the bleacher seats are better anyway, because you're kind of like you're staring at the entire field and you see things. And that's also how I caught my home run ball.
Oh, really? I didn't know you caught one.
Yeah. So it was the Phillies were losing 6-0. It was the top of the 8th. And I said, well, I'm going to the restroom and I'll meet you out there and let's get out of here. My son was with me with one of his friends. And so I walked down and there's this gap between the seats and the outfield wall. And by then it was the bottom of the 8th. And Jock Pedersen hits the ball. It goes into the stands and bounces and then drops right in front of me. And I just stick my hand out like this. And there it was. And then this nice lady said, you should give this to my son. I said, no, I'm keeping it. And she dropped the F-bomb on me. But
you shouldn't give it up, right?
So she wasn't amused by this, but I caught a baseball with my bare hand. Now I have 2 baseballs, one for each child. That one's going to Alex because he was there for that game.
Yeah.
The second one is at Play It Again Sports in Austin. I was going through the baseballs because I wanted a baseball just to like hang around with when I'm working.
Uh-huh.
And I found one that was autographed by Mel Stoudemire of the Yankees.
Really?
For $1.
Did you have it validated?
Pardon?
Did you have it validated?
I don't think anyone would go through that much trouble to spell Stoudemire for nothing. Anyway, I bring it home, and I think it's really cool, and I set it down. And my daughter, who was like 6 or something at the time, she signs the ball. And I'm going like, that's amazing. And she later on, she was like totally embarrassed. Like, I can't believe you still have that around. I says, oh no, everyone thinks this is cool. So I said, I got Stoudemire ball, but it's signed by my daughter. That's more important.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I love that.
So yeah, so I got 2 baseballs to pass on to the kids someday.
Well, Earle, we gotta let you go, but I wanted to say thank you for joining today. I know you're a busy man, taking stock in your first place NFC East, leading Eagles. But wait till next season. That's all I'm going to say right now. It's just like my fantasy football team. I will be back. I promise. The Cowboys will rise again.
I got my copy of AARP news every month. And this month they have a picture of the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl team from whenever that happened on the cover.
Earle, it's always a pleasure, my man. Thank you for joining today. I really do appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Take care, brother.
Thank you, Earle.